The message was clear. Humanity had not returned for indiscriminate revenge. They had come to rebalance the scales of justice that had been broken 50,000 years ago. In the council chambers, former enemies begged for forgiveness while trying to understand what had happened to them. The Vorthak delegation, led by Ambassador Krextal himself, found themselves in the bizarre position of negotiating with beings they had once condemned to extinction. The irony was not lost on anyone present. Admiral Jinho materialized in the Ait chamber through some form of advanced teleportation technology, his presence causing the air itself to shimmer with barely contained energy. He moved with fluid grace, each step perfectly calculated, his enhanced senses processing thousands of data streams while maintaining perfect awareness of every being in the room. "Your species teaches that strength determines survival," he said to the assembled delegates, his voice carrying the same harmonics that had announced humanity's return. "You believed you were strong enough to judge us 50,000 years ago. You were wrong about our strength, but you were also wrong about the nature of strength itself." The Admiral gestured, and holographic displays materialized throughout the chamber, showing the current state of council space. Some worlds continued their normal operations under human protection, while others struggled to adapt to their new limitations. But nowhere was there the wholesale destruction that the Council had once visited upon Earth. "True strength is not the ability to destroy what you fear," Jinho continued. "True strength is the wisdom to know when destruction is necessary and when mercy serves a greater purpose. We have spent 50 millennia learning this lesson. Today we teach it to you." Chief Administrator Subin coordinated the establishment of the new Galactic Confederation from her position aboard the administrative vessel, New Dawn. The complex negotiations required balancing the needs of 3,000 different species, while ensuring that the mistakes of the past would not be repeated. Some species would become full partners in the new order. Others would remain under human guidance until they proved their commitment to peace. The Vorthak, despite their history of aggression, were given a path to redemption. Their military capabilities had been neutralized, but their industrial infrastructure remained intact. They could rebuild their civilization along more peaceful lines, trading their warrior culture for one focused on creation rather than conquest. Across the galaxy, monuments began appearing on worlds that had never heard of Earth. Simple markers showing a blue-green planet surrounded by mathematical symbols representing mercy, justice, and the long memory of those who had learned to transcend their origins, without forgetting their roots. Director Minho oversaw the construction of New Terra, a world crafted from the dreams and memories of the original Earth. Here, human children learned the stories of their ancestors while alien visitors came to understand the price of fear and the value of wisdom. The planet served as both memorial and school, reminding all who saw it that strength without compassion leads only to the darkness between stars. The age of the Galactic Council had ended not with the crash of weapons or the cry of battle, but with the quiet establishment of something better. The human protectorate would guide the galaxy not through fear, but through the hard-earned wisdom of a species that had learned to transform suffering into strength and revenge into justice. In the end, humanity had kept their promise. They had remembered, they had returned, and they had taught the galaxy what it truly meant to be strong. The fleet positioned itself in a perfect sphere around the capital world, close enough that every citizen could look up and see them hanging in the sky like impossible constellations. Yet for all their overwhelming presence, the ships made no aggressive moves. They simply waited, silent and patient as if they had all the time in the universe. Then every screen on the planet activated at once. Admiral Jin Ho stood in what appeared to be the bridge of his flagship, though calling it a bridge hardly did justice to the space around him. Living walls pulsed with bioluminescent patterns, while holographic displays showed real-time images of council worlds going about their daily business. The man himself was clearly human, but transformed by 50,000 years of evolution into something greater than his ancestors could have imagined. He stood nearly 9 feet tall, his proportions perfect despite his enhanced size. His skin seemed to shift between flesh and energy, sometimes appearing solid, other times translucent enough to see the light flowing through his veins. His eyes held depths that spoke of experiences spanning millennia, of knowledge gained through suffering and wisdom earned through loss. When he spoke, his voice carried harmonics that bypassed the ears entirely, resonating directly in the minds of every listener. Even species without auditory organs could understand his words perfectly, while those with enhanced hearing detected layers of meaning that revealed the true scope of human evolution. I am Admiral Jin Ho, heir to the dead world you called Terra. We are human. We have returned. The simple words sent shockwaves through the council chambers. Historians frantically searched ancient archives, trying to remember details of the Terra incident that had been relegated to footnotes 50,000 years ago. But their research was interrupted as the transmission continued, showing images that made their blood run cold. Human vessels phased through the most secure installations in council space, like ghosts walking through walls. Weapons depots, government, bunkers, military shipyards, all penetrated without triggering a single alarm or alerting a single guard. The message was clear. Nowhere was safe. Nothing was hidden. No defense could keep them out. Communications Officer Haijin coordinated the broadcast from a command center that seemed to exist partially outside normal space-time. Her enhanced neural networks transmitted the message simultaneously across 13 different galactic languages, ensuring that every species received it in perfect clarity. The technology involved was so advanced that council communication experts couldn't even detect how it was being accomplished. We have spent 50 millennia studying you, Admiral Jin Ho continued, his voice never rising above a conversational tone, yet somehow carrying the weight of absolute authority. We know which of your worlds cannot survive without imports from others. We know which of your species require specific atmospheric conditions to live. We know where your children sleep and where your leaders hide. The transmission showed footage that proved these weren't idle threats. Human surveillance had penetrated every level of council society, from public meetings to private conversations held in the most secure facilities. They had been watching, learning, cataloging weaknesses while the council went about their daily lives in complete ignorance. In 72 hours, we will begin the correction, the Admiral announced. Every species that voted for our extinction will face judgment proportional to their crimes. Those who spoke against our destruction may appeal for mercy. Those who remained silent will be granted the same consideration they showed us. His expression never changed throughout the entire broadcast, but his final words carried a finality that made even the bravest council warriors feel cold. We are no longer the species you destroyed. We are what your fear created, and we have come home. The transmission ended, leaving the capital world in stunned silence. In 72 hours, humanity would begin their reckoning. The question now was whether the Galactic Council would face their judgment with dignity, or whether they would repeat the same mistakes that had led to this moment 50,000 years ago. The 72 hours passed with agonizing slowness across Council space. Some species prepared for war, mobilizing their fleets and activating ancient weapons that hadn't been used in millennia. Others sent frantic diplomatic messages, offering tributes and apologies for crimes they had forgotten they committed. Few simply waited, knowing that no preparation could protect them from beings who had transcended the normal laws of reality. When the promised hour arrived, the correction began with surgical precision. The Vorthak hegemony, whose ancestors had championed humanity's destruction, woke to find their homeworld experiencing impossible phenomena. Gravity began flowing in strange patterns, causing their mighty war machines to float helplessly in the air, while their underground bunkers found themselves suspended thousands of feet above the surface. No one was harmed, but their entire military infrastructure had been rendered completely useless overnight. Strategic Commander Taemin observed the operation from his command vessel, monitoring the quantum manipulations that were reshaping entire worlds. His enhanced consciousness could track millions of simultaneous alterations across dozens of star systems, each one calculated to disable rather than destroy. The humans had learned the difference between justice and revenge during their long exile. On the crystalline homeworld of the hierarchy, citizens watched in amazement as their cities began rearranging themselves. The geometric structures that housed millions of beings shifted and flowed like liquid, forming new patterns that spelled out messages of condemnation when viewed from orbit. The transformations were beautiful in their complexity, turning entire continents into living artwork that told the story of humanity's destruction. But the most shocking changes occurred in the hegemony's capital system. Their entire battle fleet, thousands of warships that had conquered dozens of worlds, simply vanished from their orbital shipyards. The vessels hadn't been destroyed. They had been translated into a parallel dimension where they would remain until their species demonstrated genuine remorse for their actions. Captain Yu Jin coordinated the protection protocols from her flagship, Mercy's Edge. While some worlds faced judgment, others found themselves shielded by invisible barriers that made them completely immune to any form of attack. The Ethereal Collective, who had consistently opposed violence throughout their history, discovered that their worlds were now surrounded by defensive fields that could repel anything from asteroid impacts to stellar radiation. The peaceful Zentari received an even greater gift. Massive cargo vessels appeared in their systems carrying technologies that solved their chronic resource shortages in a single day. Atmospheric processors that could terraform dead worlds in weeks. Energy generators that drew power from quantum fluctuations. Manufacturing systems that could create any material needed for their expanding civilization. As So Young's consciousness returned to her research stations, Dong Hyun made his way to the ship's memorial chamber. Here, holographic images of Earth played in an endless loop. Blue oceans, green forests, white clouds swirling through clear skies. Every human visited this place regularly, not out of nostalgia but out of duty. They needed to remember not just what they had lost, but what they were fighting to protect. The time for hiding was almost over. Soon humanity would return to claim their rightful place among the stars. Technician Veltar had been staring at the same display screen for 6 hours straight, his 4 eyes beginning to water from strain. The Kepler monitoring station sat on the very edge of council space, a lonely outpost whose job was to watch empty sectors where nothing ever happened. It was considered punishment duty, the kind of assignment given to technicians who had made mistakes or upset their superiors. But today, something was definitely happening in the empty sectors. The readings made no sense at all. Massive gravitational distortions would appear out of nowhere, twist spacetime into impossible shapes, then vanish as if they had never existed. Energy signatures spiked and disappeared within microseconds, showing power outputs that should have been detectable from halfway across the galaxy. Most disturbing of all, the distortions seemed to be moving in patterns, as if they were deliberately avoiding the monitoring station's sensors. Veltar's webbed fingers danced across his control panel as he tried to get a clearer reading. His people, the amphibious Centauri, were known for their patience and attention to detail, qualities that made them excellent technicians but terrible warriors. Right now, his methodical nature was the only thing keeping him from panicking as the impossible readings continued to multiply. "Station Commander," he called through the intercom, his voice rippling with the harmonic overtones of his species' underwater speech. "You need to see this. Something is moving through the outer sectors and it's not following any known laws of physics." Within minutes, similar reports were flooding in from monitoring stations across the rim of council space. Trade vessels reported, glimpsing structures in hyperspace that shouldn't have been able to exist. Geometric shapes that seemed to bend inward on themselves, creating optical illusions that made seasoned navigators feel sick just looking at them. Some captains swore they saw entire cities floating between dimensions, populated by figures that moved with impossible grace. The Galactic Council's Science Division initially dismissed these reports as mass hysteria or equipment failures. After all, the Outer Rim was notorious for playing tricks on people's minds. The isolation, the endless darkness, the strange radiations from dying stars, all of these could cause hallucinations in susceptible individuals. But then the triumphant Claw made direct contact. Captain Morthak was not the type to panic easily. His people, the warrior caste of the Vorthak hegemony, were bred for combat and trained to face the unknown without flinching. He had fought in 3 major wars, survived 4 different assassination attempts, and once single-handedly held off a pirate fleet until reinforcements arrived. If anyone could handle a strange encounter in deep space, it was him. The patrol ship was conducting a routine sweep of the outer spiral when space itself seemed to tear open beside them. What emerged from the rift defied every classification, system in Council databases. The vessel appeared to be grown rather than built, its hull flowing and shifting like liquid metal. Parts of it seemed solid, while other sections appeared to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Unknown vessel. Identify yourself immediately. Captain Morthak barked into his communication system. You are in violation of Council space protocols. Respond or be fired upon. The strange ship made no reply through conventional channels. Instead, every computer system aboard the triumphant Claw simultaneously received a data packet that bypassed all their security systems. The information forced itself onto every screen, every display, every readout throughout the ship. The image that appeared was hauntingly beautiful and utterly terrifying. A blue-green world hung in space like a precious jewel, its surface covered in swirling white clouds and vast oceans. But even as they watched, brilliant beams of energy struck the planet from multiple directions. The world's surface began to glow, then burn, then melt into molten slag. Within moments, nothing remained but a dead rock floating in the void. Below the image, written in perfect galactic standard script, was a single word. Remember. Captain Morthak felt something cold settle in his stomach as he stared at the display. The image looked familiar somehow, though he couldn't place where he might have seen it before. His tactical officer was running the image through historical databases, but the search was taking longer than it should have. Then the phantom ship simply vanished, leaving no trace that it had ever existed, except for the haunting image still, displayed on their screens. The triumphant Claw was found 3 days later by a search and rescue team, drifting silently in space with all systems functioning normally. The crew was alive and physically unharmed, but something fundamental had changed about them. They spoke in whispers when they spoke at all, their eyes holding a distant look as if they were seeing something far away. The strangest reports came from the ship's security officers. They described walking through familiar corridors only to find them transformed into impossible landscapes. Rolling green hills under blue skies, forests of trees that seemed to whisper in the wind, meadows filled with flowers that gave off their own gentle light. They claimed to have breathed fresh air that tasted of rain and growing things, so different from the recycled atmosphere of their ship. Medical teams found no physical trauma, no signs of alien influence, no evidence of psychological manipulation. Yet every single crew member had begun experiencing the same recurring dream. They found themselves standing in a vast courtroom, facing judges whose faces they couldn't quite remember upon waking. They were accused of crimes they didn't recall committing, tried by laws they didn't understand, condemned by voices that spoke with the authority of the dead. Within weeks, more encounters occurred throughout Council space. The phantom ships appeared without warning, always near the edge of sensor range, always carrying the same message. They never attacked, never threatened, never made demands. They simply showed the image of the burning world and vanished, leaving behind crews who whispered of impossible visions and shared nightmares. Fear began to spread through the Council chambers like a virus. Something had been watching them, studying them, learning their weaknesses while they went about their daily lives in blissful ignorance. The age of Council supremacy was ending, and something far more dangerous was taking its place. The age of human extinction was over. The age of human revelation had begun. The emergency session bell echoed through the Council chambers with an urgency that hadn't been heard in over 1,000 years. Representatives from across the galaxy abandoned their normal schedules and rushed to the capital world, their ships clogging the orbital traffic lanes as everyone tried to arrive at once. The phantom encounters had spread like wildfire, and panic was beginning to set in among even the most powerful species. Fleet Admiral Zordon slammed his armored fist on the speaking podium, his voice booming through the translation systems. Enough of this madness. We face an unknown threat that appears and disappears at will, penetrates our most secure spaces, and leaves our crews babbling about impossible visions. I say we mobilize every fleet, every weapon, every resource we have and hunt these phantoms down before they can strike at our core worlds. The Warhawk faction cheered their approval, but they were quickly drowned out by the melodic tones of the ethereal collective's representative. These beings of pure energy had no physical form, existing as shimmering clouds of light that communicated through harmonic frequencies. Violence brought us to this crisis, their speaker sang. Violence destroyed the world we now see in our nightmares. We should seek communication, understanding, perhaps even reconciliation with whatever force we have awakened. The debates raged for hours as more reports flooded in. The phantom encounters were accelerating, with dozens of council ships reporting the same terrifying experience every day. Each crew returned changed, marked by visions of a burning world and dreams of standing trial before unseen judges. Some representatives called for evacuation of the outer sectors. Others demanded the immediate deployment of the Council's most advanced warships. Then the arguments stopped. Space above the capital world began to ripple like water disturbed by a thrown stone. The effect spread outward in perfect circles, growing larger and brighter until it seemed as if reality itself was being peeled back layer by layer. What emerged from this cosmic wound defied every law of physics that Council scientists thought they understood. The human fleet that appeared was vast beyond comprehension. Thousands upon thousands of vessels arranged themselves in formations, so perfect they looked like mathematical equations written across the stars. Each ship seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, their hulls shifting between solid matter and pure energy. Some appeared to be grown from living tissue, others looked like crystallized music, and a few seemed to be built from captured starlight itself. The massive council chamber stretched out like a metal ocean, filled with creatures from 1,000 different worlds. Some had tentacles instead of arms, others breathed methane through gill slits, and a few floated in liquid-filled suits. But today they all shared the same cold determination as they stared at the holographic display showing Earth spinning peacefully in space. Ambassador Krextal rose from his seat, his reptilian features gleaming under the chamber's harsh lights. His people, the Vorthak, had conquered dozens of worlds through sheer brutality, and now he spoke for them all. His voice echoed through translation devices as he delivered the words that would change everything. The species known as humans have proven themselves unfit for galactic civilization. In merely 2 centuries, they have spread to 17 star systems. They refuse our laws, reject our guidance, and show no signs of slowing their aggressive expansion. Today we vote to eliminate this threat before it grows beyond our control. The vote was swift and merciless. Green lights flashed across the chamber as species after species agreed to humanity's destruction. Only a handful of amber lights showed abstention, while even fewer red lights indicated opposition. The mathematics were clear. Humanity had been sentenced to extinction by an overwhelming majority. Captain Hyunwoo felt the ship shudder around him as the Exodus pushed its engines beyond safe limits. Behind him, 9,999 other humans slept in stasis pods, trusting him to carry them to safety. Through the viewscreen, he could see 2 other ships matching his desperate pace, the Haven and the Sanctuary, each carrying their own precious cargo of survivors. They had launched in secret weeks ago, when Dr. Minji's intelligence network had intercepted the first whispers of the Council's plan. Most humans had refused to believe it. Earth was strong, they said. Earth had powerful fleets and advanced weapons. Earth would never fall to alien threats. But Hyunwoo had seen the tactical reports. He knew the numbers. When the entire galaxy united against you, even Earth's mighty fleets were nothing more than gnats facing a hurricane. The stellar purification array had been built by the Council's greatest minds over the past 50 years. Massive collector stations, each one larger than Earth's moon, positioned themselves around stars throughout the galaxy. They could drain a star's energy and focus it into a beam capable of cracking planets like eggs. Now 16 of these collectors turned their attention to Sol. The beam struck Earth at exactly 1432 Galactic Standard Time. The planet's blue oceans flashed to steam in seconds while its green continents melted like candle wax. The 7 billion humans living there didn't even have time to scream before the atmosphere itself caught fire. Mars came next, its red surface turning white hot as the mining colonies and terraforming stations vanished in nuclear fire. The Council's targeting computers were precise. Every human settlement, every orbital platform, every ship in the system was cataloged and destroyed. Even the research stations around Jupiter's moons were reduced to glowing plasma. In the Council chamber, representatives watched the destruction with satisfaction. Some even applauded as Earth's smoking remains cooled into lifeless rock. They had acted decisively, they told themselves. They had prevented a war that could have consumed the galaxy, but their sensors couldn't detect the 3 ships that had already jumped beyond their detection range, carrying humanity's last hope into the unknown regions of space. Captain Hyunwoo guided his small fleet toward coordinates that Dr. Minji had discovered in ancient star charts. The location of ruins left behind by a civilization so old that even the Council had forgotten their name. As the Exodus disappeared into hyperspace, its communication array broadcast one final message back toward the burning solar system. The transmission was simple, but it would echo through the galaxy for 50,000 years to come. We are human. We remember. We will return. The precursor ruins waited in the darkness between stars, their secrets intact after millions of years. Soon humanity would learn what it truly meant to transcend the limits of flesh and time. Soon they would discover technologies that made the Council's weapons look like stone axes. But first, they had to survive. They had to learn. They had to grow strong enough to face an entire galaxy that wanted them dead. The age of human weakness was ending. The age of human evolution was about to begin. Time moved differently in the deep void between galaxies. While civilizations rose and fell in normal space, the 3 human colony ships drifted through regions so empty that light itself seemed to lose its way. 50,000 years had passed since Earth burned, though the humans aboard these vessels had experienced only a fraction of that time thanks to the strange physics of their hiding place. The Galactic Council had transformed beyond recognition during those long millennia. What started as a modest alliance of 12 species had bloomed into a massive government controlling 3,000 worlds across 4 spiral arms. Their cities now covered entire continents, their trade routes connected, distant galaxies and their fleets numbered in the millions. To them, humanity was ancient history. Old textbooks mentioned the Terra incident in a single paragraph, describing it as a necessary intervention against a potentially dangerous species. Council children learned about it the same way human children once learned about extinct dinosaurs, as something interesting that happened long ago but had no real connection to their daily lives. But humanity had not simply survived in the darkness. They had found something extraordinary. The precursor ruins that Dr. Minji had discovered were not just archaeological sites. They were schools, libraries, and testing grounds left behind by beings who had mastered the fundamental forces of reality itself. These ancient teachers had waited patiently for students worthy of their knowledge, and in desperate humanity, they found exactly what they had been searching for. Commander Dong-hyun walked through corridors that seemed to shift and flow around him like living tissue. The Remembrance was no longer the crude metal ship that had fled Earth's destruction. Over thousands of years, human engineers had learned to grow their vessels rather than build them, creating spacecraft that were part machine, part organism, and part something entirely new. His own body told the same story of transformation, standing nearly 8 feet tall, with skin that could shift between flesh and energy at will. Dong-hyun looked like what ancient humans might have imagined when they dreamed of becoming gods. His enhanced brain could process information at speeds that would have seemed impossible to his ancestors, simultaneously tracking millions of data streams while maintaining perfect awareness of his surroundings. Yet for all his improvements, he still felt the old pain. Every human carried it now, a genetic memory of loss that had been carefully preserved through 50,000 years of evolution. They called it the burning, and it served as both motivation and warning. They would never forget what had been taken from them, but they would also never become the kind of monsters who would inflict such suffering on others. Research Director So Young materialized beside him as her consciousness transferred from the observation stations hidden within nearby black holes. The extreme gravity wells served as perfect laboratories, allowing human scientists to compress millennia of research into subjective moments. What seemed like brief conversations to outside observers were actually years-long experiments conducted in the stretched time near event horizons. "The reconnaissance phase is nearly complete," she reported, her voice carrying harmonics that conveyed far more information than simple words. "We have cataloged every major council world, every fleet position, every technological capability. Their defenses are sophisticated by their standards, but they still think in terms of matter and energy. They have no conception of what we've become." Dong-hyun nodded, accessing her data through their shared neural network. The intelligence they had gathered was staggering in its completeness. They knew which council worlds depended on food imports to survive, which species required specific atmospheric conditions, which trade routes were essential to maintaining their economy. They had identified every weakness, every vulnerability, every pressure point that could be used to bring the mighty council to its knees. But perhaps most importantly, they had learned to distinguish between their true enemies and innocent bystanders. The council was not a monolithic entity. It contained species who had genuinely opposed humanity's destruction, others who had remained neutral, and many who had simply been too weak to resist the majority vote. When the time came for justice, humanity would remember these distinctions. The weapons they had developed defied easy description. Some could phase matter between dimensions, making traditional shields useless. Others could manipulate probability itself, ensuring that enemy shots would always miss while human attacks would always find their mark. The most terrifying could reach backward through time to prevent their targets from ever being built. Yet, these were tools of precision, not destruction. Humanity had learned the difference between justice and revenge, between correction and annihilation. They would not repeat the Council's mistake of destroying what they feared to understand.